Hello. So as you can see, I've been doing some just odd things, trying to figure out or just do all the little things that need to be done. This is going to be the vent for the fuel cell. This fitting should be here soon, hopefully. And I'm just going to use the vent that was already in the car. Goes up, and as you can see, it looped around here and then goes straight down and through the bottom of the car. So I'm just going to tap right into that with a little line, just waiting for that fitting. So fuel system is pretty much done except for that vent. Things I've been doing up here, I did a lot last night and didn't record any of it. I probably should have, but I didn't because I just wanted to get things done. So I got the mounts for the radiator done. This one was a pain in the butt to make because there wasn't really anywhere for it to mount to up on the top, and the hood prop was in the way. So as you can see, I made this bracket to bend and go underneath it and then bolt right here. So it works as it should. Mostly. It's actually this part. The factory one didn't actually go together very good. So there, see, works like brand new, probably. So we also got the battery box done yesterday. Got the battery in here. I've been putting off the wiring because it's just gonna be a nightmare. Trying to figure out the alternator, how that needs to be hooked up. This is the wiring diagram I found for the alternator, and it's just so annoying. I kind of wish I would have just bought a cheap like one wire alternator or something, because it would have made it so much simpler to wire up. But I have all these fuses in here that I need to add, and then a fuse going to the battery, and it's a pain in the butt. So I don't really know exactly. I mean, this defines what each thing needs to do. It's just actually wiring up is going to be very difficult. And then this is the engine wiring schematic diagram, whatever. And then I have one for the car too, which is inside. Let me go grab that. So this is the wiring diagram for the car, and it's the entire car, chassis and engine, everything, because obviously the engine was much simpler back then. So I need to figure out what wires I need to keep on here and what I can get rid of. I need like the ignition switch wire and just stuff like that I need to keep. All the wiring on the car did work before I started this project, like all the brake lights and headlights and all that stuff worked, and I haven't messed with it at all. So I'm hoping that all of that will still work once I hook the battery up, which I haven't tried yet, but mostly because I don't have a ground or a positive cable right now, and I need to figure out where to hook those up at, because the original positive cable came off the starter solenoid, and I don't have that on here anymore because I don't need it. So the positive cable, I know this is the alternator output cable. So that is positive cable to charge the battery, which needs to be obviously on the positive. But the problem with that is it's just one wire, and this originally went to the in-engine fuel fuse box on the Lexus, and then these wires tapped into this wire because it needs to be able to regulate the power that the alternator is outputting, and it has the light for it if it's not charging and stuff like that. So I need to tap these into this in this wire somewhere, but the problem is I don't really want to cut this wire. So this needs to go to a fuse box, and then there needs to be an output from that to the battery, and then these need to tap in there in a fuse box, which I bought a fuse box, but the problem is I don't know where I put it, for one. Oh, it's in here. So the problem is this was going to be for the inside of the car for all of the other connections, and the alternator also needs like 130 or 110 amp fuse, and I don't think this is rated for that. So I don't really know. This is mostly going to be for the ignition and like the fuel cell or the fuel pump and the ignition wire and all the basically the stuff to turn the ECU on, and all the stuff that I had just wired straight together to get the engine run before. There's going to be a positive coming to this, and then all of these are going to come off, and then there's going to be a relay, which I bought these. These are a bunch of relays with connectors, and they can all hook together, and then I'm just going to have each one of these come off here to a relay, and then the ignition will switch all these on, and then we'll have power from this and fuses in here, and the lights will tell you if the fuses are good or not, and it'll be nice. But it's just figuring out how to get the alternator to work. I can deal with the rest, but I'm gone back and forth on how to get the alternator to wire up and work with the rest of the car. And if you can't tell, it's stressing me out a little bit. And the other thing is I only have 2 more days to get this car done for the event that I wanted it to get done for. There's a car show that I wanted to take it to that's pretty much every year, and it's going to be in 2 days, and I'm just very stressed and want to get this done. I've been working on this car like day and night. Whenever I get a free time, I've been working on it. And I've gotten a lot done, but there's just so much more to go. And I mean, yeah, it's just a lot of wiring, really. The car technically should run and drive right now. Everything's there. I need to bleed the front brake still. It's the only thing I don't have hooked up. Everything else is hooked up. I should actually be able to put coolant in it now. I'm pretty sure I plugged all the ports for the coolant, and all that should be working. I don't have the fan wired, obviously, yet. I don't have an overflow, so I just have this going straight down to the ground. I was going to use the Civic overflow, but the tank is all messed up, so I just need to get a universal one to mount in here. But I got all the other lines, like this one I just patched across, and there's another one down here that went to the original overflow that I plugged. So, I mean, the cooling system should be done, so I'm not worried about that. I got the vacuum line on the brake booster, so that should be good. What else? Igniters are mounted. That should be working. Yeah, it quite literally is just the ignition or the wiring. I did test the clutch. It does work, and it does disengage and it engages, so that shouldn't be a problem. I still need to check and make sure there's fluid in the transmission. I have yet to do that. I have the fluid sitting right over here for it. I did buy it, but I have yet to check that, so I still have to do that. I need to tighten the drive shaft bolts on the rear end. I haven't done that yet. I need to find the torque for those. So the rest of this video is probably just going to be a big time lapse of me going insane trying to figure everything out. So I hope you enjoy. So it's the next day. We need to start doing all the wiring. That's what we're going to do today. Can't put it off any longer. So this is the diagram for the alternator, which has been giving me the most anxiety. I figured out what size fuses I need for in the lines here, but after looking at it, it's pretty straightforward. This diagram makes it look a lot more complicated than it actually is. So I think I figured out that. What we need to do first, I need to find the car's ignition wire because I want to use the factory ignition. So looking through here, here it is, ignition switch. So we need the ignition wire, the start wire, neutral start switch, and that goes up into here, turns into a brown wire. So we need it before it leaves the car and goes to the engine bay. So it's a red black wire off of the neutral start switch, which the neutral start switch isn't in the car. We have a different one. So we're actually going to wire in our neutral start switch, which is on the Civic clutch pedal. And we actually have the harness for that sitting right over here. That's the brake light switch, and this is for the clutch, both of these. So we're only going to need one of these. I think the other one was to kill the cruise control, but we obviously don't have cruise control, so I believe it's the yellow one is the neutral safety switch. So we'll hook that up. So going off the start, we'll go to this neutral safety switch, and then that should be all we need for that. Ignition is this one here. It's all black, green, red, blue after that. So 2 red, blues, neutral safety switch. We need this. Alright, so this is the neutral start switch on the clutch pedal. I got the plug plugged in there. If we put this in here, we need positive power from the neutral start switch to start the car. So if we put these in here, push the pedal down, it gives us positive power when the clutch is all the way down. So we're not going to plug this into the ignition switch like the original car was. The ECU actually has a wire on it that needs positive power. So we're going to run the ECU to this, and then we're going to run the other side to a fuse into the battery and give it positive power. So when this clutch pedal's all the way down, it'll send power through here to the ECU, and our neutral start switch will work. So that is figured out. That'll pretty much be its own circuit as well, so I could probably just wire that in and just be done with it. So I'm probably just gonna do that now. right, we're making some progress. I have the engine bay pretty much wired up, I think. So I got the original fuse block for the alternator off of the LS400, and I'm using it to wire the alternator. So what we have here, we got our negatives hooked up. So negative goes down and bolts into the frame right down here. And then we have the engine grounded right here, grounded to the frame, and then it goes to a bolt on the block there. So all the ground should be good. This big wire that's coiled up right here, I didn't want to cut it in case I need to move it, so I just coiled it up right here. This is the output of the alternator, and it's going back to its original post on this fuse block. And as you can see, this is connected to this plate here. So that power comes in, and there's a 120 amp fuse here. So that power goes through that fuse and out here, and this wire goes to the positive terminal on the battery. So that will charge our battery. All right, so these are getting power off of this plate. So all these terminals have the same power going to them. So this one's a 40 amp, and I have that hooked up to power going to the fuse panel inside, which I'll get to in a sec. This one is the power to the original wire harness on the car. So to get the headlights working and in terms of all the stuff that is originally on the car, that's powered here with a 60 amp fuse, which I might take that out and put a lower amperage fuse in there, but that's just the one that was in there already. So then this last one is coming from the battery terminal, and you can see it's jumped right here. So these two are connected together, and there'll be 7.5 amp fuse in here that go to this wire, which is the signal wire for the alternator. So it's telling it how much voltage the battery has and whether the alternator needs to charge the battery or not. So that's what that is. I have it just bolted on there for now, but there's no fuse, so I'm gonna need to get a fuse for that. I don't think these square ones come in that small of an amperage, so I'm probably going to have to do something different with this, but I'm gonna try to use this so they're bolted on here because everything's nice and secure in this block. And I want to keep it that way. And then these flaps close on it to keep everything nice and secure and not gonna hit anything. So I like that. So that's pretty much it. And then these other two wires are from the alternator right here. The yellow one is for the alternator light. So if it's not charging correctly, it'll turn a light on the dash. So that's what that one is. And then this one, I think it's a black yellow or a black white, is the ignition signal. So it tells it that it needs to turn on basically, and it's power going to it. So that is going to the fuse panel as well, and those will both have a fuse on them, and we'll deal with that in a little bit. But that is pretty much all we needed to wire up here. I still need to run a switch for the fan. I don't have temperature control on this right now, so I'm just going to run this into the car with a switch. So I still need to do that, but I'm not going to worry about it right now because that's not as important at the moment. So I have these all running through here to the original, or through the original mounting flange, which I'm gonna have to move this eventually, probably like up here, put a hole in, but it's very hard to find a good spot to put it. So I'm just putting it through the blower motor hole right now. So probably where it's going to be, but we can take it back out because I'm going to make sure everything in there is on a connector so I can unplug it and pull it back through if I need to. So we're going to go in the car now and work on that. Just to give you a little preview, I hooked the positive up and we should have headlights and tail lights now if we turn that on. You can see the headlights came on. Those are working. We should have tail lights too, which we do. So everything should be working how I think it should be. I don't think the turn signals work unless the car is actually running, so, which I could probably turn the ignition on. No, they still don't work. I don't know. I mean, the flasher form's right there, but I think the car might actually need to be running in order for that to work. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see. So, we're gonna unplug this again. Take this back off. So what we have in here, this is the fuse panel with the power coming from that fuse in there. So this is what we're going to hook all of our stuff to in here. The main relay, I don't think this is main relay. I don't think we actually need this wire because we're not using that. This will be battery, so that'll have its own fuse. This is the check engine light, and that will have its own fuse. This is the light for the alternator that I just talked about, and then this is the ignition for the alternator, which I also just talked about. And then the only other things we need to hook up are this connector here. We have the starter switch, so that'll have its own fuse. The ignition positive, that'll have its own fuse. We got igniter and injector positive, that'll have its own fuse, and then the B and B1 positive, and that'll have its own fuse as well. And that should be it. So once we get all that powered up, it should be powered exactly how it was when we started on the engine stand. I've been messing with the ignition switch for a while now, and I've determined that it's not working correctly. I was testing it while I was in the car here, and it seemed to, when you turn it with it just off, it was getting like 5 volts through it, which doesn't seem right. It should have nothing going through it. With it turned to ignition, it was getting about the same. If you tried to start it, it would jump up to 7 and then go back down. And then if you turned it back to ignition from start, it would keep 7 in the ignition part. And then I tried just testing it outside of here after taking it apart, and it's just not working. I'm gonna go get a different one, a new one, because I don't have anything that will fit this. So I'm gonna have to run to the store and get another one. I'm sick of messing with this, and I'd rather just have a nice new one. And this was leaking here. You can see kind of the rust that built up here. I think this car leaked a lot through the seal here or something. And it actually kind of puddled right down in here where the ignition switch sat. So it's probably a good idea just to get a new one anyway. So that's what we're gonna go do. I've made some progress. I got the new ignition switch and I wired it in mostly. I just need the starter wire plugged in, but right now this is constant power from the battery. This is the neutral start switch positive. It can have constant power. It's not going to hurt anything. It's switched on the pedal, and then it goes over the pedal to that switch and then comes back and plugs into the wire for the ECU. Next one is this battery positive. It can have constant as well. So I plug that straight into here, and I'll have to put fuses in here as well. Then all the other ones are switched. So I went through and added ends to all these as I saw fit. So the ignition wire coming off of the ignition, obviously, but the ignition position, so constant power with the key on, is I put a fuse in the line because this block, it doesn't have like a separate part for switched power and constant power. So I probably would have gone a different route with this fuse block, but this is what I have, so I'm working with it. So anything connected to this has constant power all the time. So what I'm doing is this is going to be the switched ignition, and I'm going to have that come in. All of these relays will be hooked to a terminal on here, so they'll have constant power going to them, and then they will be hooked to whatever accessory I need them to be on, which is switched. So like, for instance, all of these wires need to be on a relay and switched. So, yeah. So each one of these will be hooked to a blue wire, and then the white wire will be hooked to this ignition wire. So I'm gonna have to tee this off for every single one. And then the black wire is just a ground. So that should work. That's what I'm working on right now. And I'll give you an update in a little bit. All right, so an update. You can see the floor is nice and clear. And then we have a rat's nest up here. So everything's bolted in, grounded, how it should be, hopefully. And this is temporarily permanent. It's definitely not rain resistant because you can see the hole in the ECU right there, so that'll be really fun. Hopefully it's all correct. There's a couple things I didn't hook up, like the lights for the alternator and the light for the ECU to see if it's powered on. If it's not starting, then I can jump that wire and see if it's actually working or not. It's pretty easy to see. The alternator, I can just test the battery and see if it's charging or not. That's also fairly easy to see. So if it's working right away when I'm done with it, then it should be working, unless I wired something wrong and the alternator goes bad. Then we'll be stranded, but whatever. I'm not hooking any of that up. I might hook the turn signals up, I guess, but the gauges, the ones I need, work, so that's all that matters. Technically, I could probably start it. I don't have any coolant in it yet. I don't have the fan wired up for the radiator. I need to just wire that to a switch on the dash. I think that's all I need to do. I was tempted to try and find the sensor wires, because there should be a sensor on here to control the fan. I don't know exactly where that is. I guess I could look on the schematics, but for right now, I was just planning on wiring it because it's really not that difficult to just turn it on and off. I had a Land Cruiser before. If you have seen my old videos of that, and I had that just wired to a switch as well when I had an electric fan on it. That's actually the electric fan that was on it right there. I think when I sold it, I put it back to stock, original and everything. But so I think that's really it. Oh, we need to, one major thing, we need to get this wire to the positive on the battery. This is the positive for the starter. So we need to hook this up. I need to extend the wire. And so why don't we do that right now? I don't have anything to crimp this big of a wire, and punching it on the vise worked good, but this wire I can't take out of the car. So I put this little thing together. It's just a tiny vise, and I taped this little pick to the inside. So when I crimp this, it should make a nice little round crimp on there. So we'll see if it works. Well, let's see what happened. Yeah, put a little crimp in there. Hopefully that'll keep it from coming out. Oh, I'd say that was a success. I'm going to tape this up really good. And the other one up here. And we should be good. Alright, so there's still some stuff to do. I just realized I still need to bleed the front brakes. I need to hook up the brake lights. I mean, the tail lights work, the running lights, but there's no wiring for the actual brake pedal. I need to do that. It's gonna be kind of hard to drive it without those. I went and got the exhaust off of the SC400. So this is what I have to use for exhaust. What I'm thinking is figure out, this is where the exhaust manifolds would come down, figure out how to hook that up, and then I'm going to use all this, and then right here where they go back in, I'm going to cut it here, and then cut this off probably here and flip this over so it just comes out the side of the car. That's the plan. Get rid of the mufflers. We'll have this resonator here, which might quiet it down just a little bit, and I'm fine with that. It'd be way too noisy without anything. So that's the plan. That's gonna be it for this episode. It might be a long one. This is 2 days of recordings. So if it is and you don't like it, I'm sorry. If it is and you like it and subscribe for more. Thanks. Bye.